Greetings, people. This isn't my usual rant, but I'm so tired of seeing this. You know, it's a lot going on in the world right now, and maybe I'm just on this part of TikTok, but it keeps showing me all of these Native Americans and African Americans beefing, like, hard. And the thing that they're beefing over is who's the true indigenous people to this country. Now, I'm not here to answer that question. I'm just here to state this. Everybody seems to ignore this one simple thing, but it's not really just one thing, it's a compilation of things. Let's compare the cultures of the two, because just maybe, what if both of y'all are right? What if both of y'all are possibly indigenous to this nation? And I say that for a couple of reasons, but I'm going to give you the most simple base reasons why I say that. Let's look at culture. Let's look at how similar the two cultures are. Whether you go all the way across the seas to Africa, or you compare culture to the Native Americans. Let's go weapons. They both used bows and spears. Typically, they had their sword-like dagger weapons, but typically bows and spears. Two different continents. Okay. Both practice nature and ancestral worship. Two different continents, though. Interesting. Both appear to be very in touch with not only the earth, but the herbs, the plants. Both civilizations have pyramids. In Africa, the pyramids of Giza are not the only pyramids there. Same in the Americas. There are plenty of, whether you want to call them mounds, which some of them genuinely might be mounds, but some of them clearly look like ancient pyramids that got lost to history or maybe destroyed. And I know that there are pyramids in other continents in the world, but just bear with me because this connection even goes deeper. Both are very rhythmic people. The natives had their rain dances and their special tribal dances, typically using drums and flutes, woodwind instruments. Same with African people. Very rhythmic, extremely rhythmic. Interesting. Both wore feather headdresses. Like, that is common. That is a common native practice, and that is a common African practice. Not to forget the Moorish people. If you've never heard of the Moors, it's Moors. Those were a group of people typically from Africa in the Middle East that traveled to the Americas before colonization. So they had already intermingled and probably had children and all of this stuff. So I'm saying that to say, I don't see why y'all are arguing. You know, y'all probably are both right. With just a few more comparisons, you know, the face paint, I don't want to call it makeup, but the people in Asia didn't really do that. And Europeans, I mean, you had Vikings that did a little bit, but not to the extent that the Africans and the natives went to. They still do that. Look at the way that both cultures value gold so much. Like, Europeans kind of just started doing that. Asian people, they do not value gold to the extent that the African people and the native people, especially the Aztecs, did. Like, I'm just saying. Not just that, what are the two groups that are commonly or mostly associated with what is known as voodoo or dark spirituality? Aside from Freemasons, it's typically African people and Native Americans. You got voodoo, and you got the stuff that they do that, you know, can create skinwalkers, and I'm sure there's a name for it or a term. I'm just not familiar with that. And the similarities are just endless. This video could be 10 minutes long, but I'm going to cut it. I'm going to end it with a fact. During slavery, American slavery, there was a series of wars called the Gullah Geechee Wars. These wars consisted of runaway slaves, because we know for a fact African Americans were enslaved and so were Native Americans. And people are going to say, oh, well, Native Americans were enslaving African Americans. That's not entirely true. And yes, there were some, but there were some African Americans that also enslaved not only Native Americans, but other African Americans. You have good people and you have bad people. But I'm saying this to say this. Why are y'all arguing? Y'all have so many similarities, and with everything going on in the world, that's the last thing you should be worried about, honestly. I know one group might feel like their culture is being imposed on, but if you just look at history, one fact is everybody did come from Africa. If we go back far enough, everybody came from there. So, with that being said, one way or another, black people are indigenous. And so are the natives. That doesn't take away from the natives being indigenous.